Hi, this is a video for the IT 201 class. This is basically a video recording of a live lecture that we did on January 28th. This is the first week of the spring semester. I currently have Moodle open to one of the sections of information design techniques. We have a general announcements board, our syllabus, and our open lab times. These are voluntary lab times if you need help. You need just some time to work on your project, so you're stuck on an idea and you need to talk to me. So it's Mondays 4 to 6, Wednesdays 3 to 5, Thursdays 4 to 6, and this is in the teaching lab, GITC 3200. If I'm not in there, I'm in my office, which is right next door. It's in the research lab side, so you can just come and get me. Either way, I'll be in one of these rooms during these times, and you can come in and work into the teaching lab, come get me if you need extra help. So if you click on the syllabus, here we have information of the course. There's myself, Eric Nersessian, the instructor in the office, which is our teaching lab in GITC 3200, and here's my email. This is the TA, Matt, and his email. He'll be helping with grading and helping out with lab time. So this class serves as an introduction to interactive design and programming principles. Most of you are IT students, either sophomore or juniors. You probably had a class or two in computer science, maybe CS 100 or CS 113. And some of you have no programming at all. So even if you had this intro to CS class, chances are it was in Java or Python, and the principles of programming that you learned, you have yet to abstract out and be able to use in other programming languages, and also just approaching coding challenges and how to develop your own algorithms. It's just good to get these experiences and grow, and it's a great a job skill set in whatever your IT areas that you're focusing on. On top of that, we are also looking at interactive design. So you can think of that as how best to make an app, a program function with whatever the intended uses are for the user. So make it very easy, streamlined, all the information that's presented and the graphical user interface, very easy to understand. So it's a lot of that connects with like front-end development. So you'll be taking classes in web development or systems integrations. In any of these projects that you create, understanding some of these, what we'll call UX, user experience, or UI, user interface, the graphical front end, how to make the experience pleasant and easy to understand, and how to make your front end easy to manipulate for the user. So those are the two core ideas that we'll be focusing on throughout this class, and we'll be using projects in interactive 3D development using the Unity game engine as a way to explore interactive design and programming. So the class is broken up into 4 sprints or 4 projects that at the end of each sprint you will deliver a project to me. I will teach every aspect of the project that you need to know along the way. So even if you're brand new to coding, you're brand new to understanding how to create an interactive experience, I teach all the skill sets along the way. So the first project will focus on user input, the second project on graphics, the third on animation, and then the fourth, do it yourself. So wrap up all these principles and try to make your own interactive 3D development with what you learned. So user input, we're going to be focusing on the mouse and keyboard, although there is other inputs that you could be considering, such as controllers and touch screens for on your phone, gesture-based, and I don't know if you've seen virtuality controllers, are motion capture devices. So you'll be building a project every 3 or 4 weeks through Unity. It's a lot of the details is abstracted away. Unity does a great job on building cross-platform, but we'll be focusing on WebGL, meaning an HTML build that anybody should be able to access on Linux, Mac, or Windows, or whatever the browser systems are. So if I click over here and just go down real quick, to, oh, here we go, Sprint 1 demo project. If you click that, this will get you here. This is going to be itch.io is a platform. I have a user account here, and this is my username.itch.io. And here's my project. And you will, every 3-4 weeks at the end of every sprint, you will build a project. So in 3 weeks, you will build something similar to this. And this is just a basic painting program. All I'm doing is creating 3D objects wherever the mouse is positioned in the world. No, for this build, you have to use the right click. So either right click to spawn or hold down to spawn a lot. And notice that this mouse position tracks where the mouse is in the screen, and this is where I'm spawning the objects. So besides that kind of core functionality of just painting, which is basically just figuring out where the mouse is and randomly creating some objects to place there, and then they get destroyed after an amount of time. Besides that, you're going to label your project, Sprint 1, your name, your section. All this, again, is going to be covered. And here's one part of the user interface that allows the user to switch their painting tool. For example, here are cubes, and here are cylinders. So besides this user interface element, which gives some variability to our development project, we can change the colors, or the random drawing of the colors. So here's just all of our everything being drawn with a color that has no red in it. Here, if I remove green, here's a whole color spectrum on my drawing, my painting stroke that doesn't have green, and here's without blue. And then obviously you can mix these different sliders up and get different spectrums, whatever it is that you're trying to get for the user's experience, right? So you will develop something similar to this. And this will be here at the end of Sprint 1. So we have 4 sections. Basically half the class is live, which is on the Monday section. It'll be for an hour and a half. And then another hour and a half, we're going to have an online section, and I'm going to give you some suggested project work to get completed so that you can break up your 3-4 week project over a span of those weeks instead of doing it all at the end. So the live class will have this some type of lecture, learn some new material, and then an exercise to demonstrate if you understand the material. If you have problems with the exercise, that should probably give you an indication you should come in for lab time. I just recently added Mondays here, so it's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. I have to update this doc. And then the online will have another edition where another series of lecture followed by an exercise, and that will be video based. So I'm actually creating the videos for the first time now. So right now I'm creating the lecture for the live part. I'll put it up here, and then when I create the video part, there'll be another link up here to another video, and I'll email it to class that it's done. So yeah, you can collaborate with your peers. Definitely, I'm going to create a forum, help forum, so that everyone can get emailed if someone is stuck, and feel free to help people outside class, in class, and lab time. Just be careful that you do your own code. If there's any part of your project that you took online or used from another student, you must credit them. It's very easy for me to, when I'm reading through the code and the projects, to figure out if you're just reusing somebody else's stuff. And all this code, all this C# code that's online is readily variable if you know how to search for it. So it, if you do take ideas from online, make sure you write the code out yourself. It's again, I could just take snippets of the code and search on it and find it if I feel like you're just copying code. So credit and make sure you do your own work. This is a hybrid course, so just make sure you come to the live classes so that you're well prepared to do the online part and do your part of the project. If you are sick, don't stay home, and I will be recording the live part of the class as well. Constructive criticism only at all times, whether it's on the forum, in the lab, or in the classroom. No one's going to make a perfect project. We don't even make perfect projects out in the professional world. It takes a lot of iterating to make it to a point where it actually is functioning, and it's never perfect. So when you Create your projects, definitely ask for feedback, talk to people, and when you give it or receive it, make sure that whatever is pointed out as also in the light of how to improve it. Always ask about, or always tell someone your ideas of how you can improve something that you think is lacking in their project. So grading, we have 5 grading points. We have 4 projects, 4 sprints. At the end of each sprint will be a project due, and then we have a final exam in the finals week. So that's 5 grading points each at 20% of your grade, or 1/5 of your grade. So even if you don't do well in the final exam, you can still do well in the class. Projects have a late penalty of 25% off for each week. So please be sure to follow along with the suggested work every week, and because I only grade at the end of each sprint, but I'm going to get into that, showing you the Moodle in 1 minute. Here's the grade markings, and also please know that a D is a passing grade. So we'll have students who won't do well in the class and deserve a D, but they don't think that that's going to let them pass to it, and so this leads to a situation at the end of the semester. Know that a D is a passing grade for an IT student. This is a core course. It just means that the rest of your classes need to pull up your total GPA over a 2.0 or a C if you do get a D. So again, if you just follow along every week and do your work, you won't have this issue. If you do run into problems, personal, family, mental health, use the appropriate organization, CCAPs or what have you, get the documentation, come talk to me early, and we can always sort out any issues you come into in this semester. So I think I went through the syllabus well. So for an example sprint here we're starting off in the Jan 22nd week, or Jan 28th week, and here's 1 week, 2 week, 3 week. The sprint is done, and the deliverables are due the day before the following class. So I can review them, give feedback, give you some suggestions of where you're lacking, where you're going to need to spend some extra time. Because remember, that 4th project is do it yourself, is do every aspect for yourself. And then we're going to start off the sprint 2, the following sprint. So here's an example project. I'm going to get to this folder later. So here we have like the first day of class. I'm going to show you the tool. We're going to start the sprint, which is create a basic painting tool in 3D. Here's my live lecture part. This is going to be intro to the class, introduction to interactive design. Then we're going to do a user flow diagram to demonstrate if you understood the content. And then there'll be an online lecture, which I'm going to create next and put up. And it's going to be intro to Unity, intro to C# scripting, and then we're going to create a script. And then I recommend for your project work that you create your project description and you create your user flow diagram, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. If you do that, then we move on to the second week, where I have a live part. We continue talking about Unity and C#. We're going to create another script. Then the online part, we're going to talk about input raycasting physics. We're going to create an actual raycaster so that we can see where the mouse is clicking into the world. And for your project, I'm going to suggest that you incorporate input raycasting and physics and then test build. Whenever you actually build your project and try to get it up online and get it into a usable format, there's always going to be issues that you run into. Even though I'll document the whole process, it's just the way that production works, coding works, is you always run into problems. So that's why this week I'm suggesting you do a test build. Wherever you're at in the project, doesn't matter if it's semi-complete, no one's going to see it. You're going to put it up onto itch.io in a draft state, in a private state, so only you can view it, but go through the whole process, so that any issues that do arise, you can come into lab time as needed. Then the third week, live lecture, we're going to cover user interfaces, and we're going to actually go through and create the scripts for creating these 3D objects and randomizing their scale and color. Then the online lecture, we'll continue on with user interfaces, and we will actually create the user interface elements that you saw in my little demo. So mouse position, primitive types, color sliders. Then I suggest for your project that you build your user interface for your project and build out your project, upload it to itch.io, and that means on the day before the following class, which I'll put up a date for this, you're going to post up in the forum here. So I already have an example project that's for my deliverable. So I have my project description, and then I have my flowchart down here. So my project description, I'm creating a painting tool by creating 3D primitives where the user clicks on the screen. The app reads in the user input on the mouse and the mouse location. So when the user is clicking and where they're clicking, it spawns 3D primitives from user input and destroys 3D primitives after a set time. I will build a user interface to give the user abilities to change parameters on spawned 3D primitives. The parameters that the user can change are the type of 3D primitive and the color range. Again, as seen here. Here's where I'm changing the type of primitive. Here's where I'm changing the color. And here is a link to my project. Below are the user flows of my project. So when you post up the link, make sure your project is I'm not in my project. Let me go to my itch.io. Let me see if I'm logged in. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can quickly log in. So when you upload your project, I just want to make you aware that there's a draft state and a published state. So if I go to my project here, notice that it's published. And so if I log out of here and I take this link, it still works. So that knows that any user can use my app. So what happens a lot is a student will put a project up, it'll be in a draft state that only they can see. They'll put up the link, no one else can play the game, can run the app. So whenever you post up the link, just make sure you log out of your account, your itch.io account, when you click on it to test that everyone can use it. So these are user flows, sample sections of what a user might go through in your app. For example, my main areas of my app are my painting flow, just actually painting, changing a primitive in the user interface, and changing the color in the user interface. So we'll get into these user flows soon. What I wanted to have a brief talk about is that user experience spawns many areas of knowledge. There's people who focus just on the research side, just on the design side, that no apps are just kind of made in a vacuum. There's a lot of psychological and almost like marketing research that goes into figuring out who should your user be, what is your app trying to solve, what problems, whose problems, how should you solve these issues or enhance people's lives or what have you. So we're not going to get deep into user experience. We're not going to get into these research workflows or these design workflows, and that's more like information systems, and there's a whole career path for that. But you do need some basic understanding that when you're making something, even in these more senior level classes you get into, you have to consider who are you making it for and how to make their life easy when they're using your app. So even if it's just your teacher, you're just trying to get a grade, but hopefully you should be thinking a little bit more out that, oh, these are probably portfolio pieces. I'm going to try and get a job in some way after I graduate, and that these projects should be cleaned up well, they should function well, and I should be proud to show them off to potential job recruiters and hiring people. So knowing a little bit of user experience is going to go a long way with your acclimation out into the real world of IT. So the way that you can focus down on user experience right now is just think of that when you're creating an app or you're using an app, that the input and the output is just as important as the processing that's going on in the app. So any app usually is made for some type of human need. So these we're dealing with human-computer interaction. The input side, we have a human sitting at the computer. They're usually interacting through a keyboard and a mouse. Again, it might be a touch screen. or a controller or something, some other type of input, you can be aware that there are the other inputs and you might design for them or think about them, but for now we're considering a keyboard and a mouse. So mouse clicks, button clicks. Usually when the user is interfacing with something and giving input, that input is then sending commands into the back end. It's changing information, it's accessing databases, it's communicating with other systems. Something is happening, right? The user is not aware of it. And how do we make them aware of it? And that would be the output side. That would be the monitor, but that could also be speakers for audio. It could be haptic or vibrational feedback. But for us, we're going to consider the monitor. The output is the graphical view back to the user. So in a broad sense, we're going to think about user experience, somebody using your app. What's the point of it? How are you trying to give that experience, and what issues are they trying to solve through the lens of input and output? What type of input should you consider that the user should be interacting with your application, and what type of output, what type of view, what type of information graphically are you presenting back to them so that they know if their actions were a success, a failure, if more modification or information is needed. So in that regards, the activity that we did in class was that I asked you to open up the Paint program. If you're in Windows, there's a Paint program. If you're in Mac or Linux, just go to some basic Paint app online, just some website or something. The whole point is just to get a very basic program and paint something. So for the scope of the class, you can paint your favorite animal, your favorite location. Students were painting trees and happy smiley faces and landscapes or bar graphs, or anything else. It doesn't matter. It's not the design, the quality of what you're making. I just want you to use an app should be familiar, relatively easy to figure out, and just do a simple task. So for like 5 minutes, just draw. Just create something in this app. So go ahead and pause this video and use the Paint tool. So when you're done, I want you to step back and I want you to think about these tools that you use. I want you to know, how familiar was this software to you? Was it pretty easy to get done the steps that you thought you had to get done for this task? What were these steps? Were there a few steps to get something, one part complete? Like if you were going to draw a hill or a cloud, how many steps did it take to draw just that cloud, not the whole landscape? Or if you drew a tree, just how many steps just to do the branch of the tree? So what are these tools? Are they quick to understand? Did you go down some failure points? Did you use some tools in ways that you thought would produce some results that you didn't think, and that you had to delete, you had to undo, you had to use the eraser tool, or you had to start a new image altogether? Were there certain situations where there was just a complete failure, where you weren't even able to test out a few different tools and find the right tool? You just could not find a way to successfully do, for example, one student was he couldn't create the most shape that he was making. I forget what the object was, but a circle or a square or whatever was available to him just wasn't representing this object he wanted, and he was unable to create a more complicated shape from the tools within the time limit. So that would be like a complete failure on the tools end for the user experience, for whatever the task was they were trying to achieve. Once you think for a while about this task that was given to you as a user, you were designated to do this task in this program, which should have been a relatively simple task and a relatively simple tool. write down the steps that you took, every single thing that you did in a discrete way. I clicked on this, I opened that tab, I changed this color, I dragged here for this shape. Write out those steps for just a small part of your total experience of this 5 minutes of you being a user of this app. Just document a partial part of it. So again, if you drew a whole tree, just like a branch. If you drew a landscape, just like a cloud. If you drew a car, like how did you make a tire? So just pause the video now and then just do that. And as you write out this list, you should see that this actually took several steps just to do something. So for example, just to draw a shape. So first you have to come up here, you have to recognize that there's a shape tool is up here. I'm clicking one of these shapes, and now I gotta click on what color I want, and then I have to drag, and while I'm still dragging, I'm like adjusting the shape of this object that I want to place down. Then I have to realize I gotta release the mouse click to draw the shape, and then I see that, oh, there's this new gizmo. So if the shape wasn't exactly perfect, the change of the mouse cursor, the output back to the user, is showing me that, oh, when I'm inside of it, it looks like I can move it. And when I'm outside of it, but on the border, it looks like I can scale it. So that was like 15 or an odd dozen of steps just to draw the most basic shape. In each of those steps, somebody had to consider all this, and not only after they consider it all, someone had to program it all. So you can see that just a very simple user flow can get rather complicated, but it does need to be figured out first, at least in some broad strokes kind of way. And that's what we're trying to get to, is we want to figure out some broad realizations of what this app is we're trying to build at each step of the way, and then how would we actually program it? How do we put it together? So that is going to introduce you, or I would like to introduce you to Google Drive. So for this class, I'd like you to create a folder. In that folder, you can use Google Docs to generate ideas. You can write your project description, but I want to use this diagramming tool to introduce the fact that these diagrams for you. So if you don't have this available, just go Connect More Apps, and then search on Draw, and then here's Draw.io. You can just install that or connect it. Once you do that, you can just click down here and create a new diagram. All right. So here is a diagram that I went through and just for a basic shape. So to introduce this idea of a user flow, like I had you walk through each step of the process of just creating a shape. So this, we can write it all out, but diagramming makes presenting this information to yourself and other people on your team much easier in communication. You can communicate a lot in shapes instead of writing everything down. So that's what this folder is. Back over here, we have a series of user flow diagrams. All right, and that connects. I also have that folder over here. That was just in there. Flow chart examples. So basically, user flow charting. Flow charting is used for other reasons, for business processes, for systems architecture, many other reasons for it. It's a broad use tool. And just know that it's to express an idea. It's not going to encapsulate everything, nor should it. It's just meant as a way to generate and communicate ideas. So the basic shapes are a rounded rectangle for start and end. We encapsulate a small process, not the whole app. It's way too much. And even of smaller processes within the user experience, we're going to abstract. We can't get all the detail. So arrows designate the flow. A parallelogram or a misaligned rectangle designates input-output. So we'll use this a lot for user input. like left clicks and right clicks. A process is a rectangle, or a running of code, some algorithm, some type of process, some type of database check, what have you. That's going to be a process. And then a diamond is a decision point. So what is the user? Which can they choose? Which user interface of what we offered them did they choose, and what do we have to do at that point? So decision points for the users within your application. So a sample app flow. This flow, which you can see is already getting kind of complicated, is just for a user to log in and pay a payment on their banking system. Now, if you think about it, there's many more parts, many more options, many more user flows. If you think about yourself logging to your banking website, think about every little thing that you do over a month, several months with your banking website. All those micro user experiences can be documented into their own flows with a start and end. In this case, we have a login, so we have to start somewhere, and usually there's a prompt. So this login page has enough information for the user to know, oh, okay, I need to enter my username, my password to enter the system. Then there's a decision point. Was that login info correct? If it's not correct, we present the user with a password reset screen, and the user then understands that they must enter their email. Then we do a check, or a decision point. Is that email match our database record? If it does match it, we move on to this part. But before I talk about that, let's go down that it doesn't match. We must re-enter the email. We check again, does it match anything in our database? If not, we have to restart the whole registration process again, present it to the user. If it does match, we can finally go to this point, which if it matched in the first time, we go there as well, where we reset, send the email, a reset email to the user. And the user has a link there that they can click, they can enter a new password, confirm it, go back, and hopefully at this point they can pass the user page correctly, which we can go over here where the user can enter account details, pay the credit card. Then we have a decision. Okay, if you want to pay your credit card, how much? If you want to pay the balance, we go all the way to this point. If you want to pay the minimum amount due, we also go to this point. If there's another amount, then you have to go through a few more steps to actually enter how much that amount would be. Otherwise, we all get back to this point where it's, well, we select the payment account they're going to pay from. Select the post date, review, submit, confirm, and end. So there should be a title up here that says, payment work process for a banking software. So this is a sample user flow. And again, I showed you what these symbols mean. Now from all of that, I want you to try and diagram out those steps that you wrote down when you used the Paint program. All right, for me, I'm going to show you a sample user flow of just drawing a shape. So we want to document the process of drawing a shape. We have the start point. And if you remember in the Paint program, to draw a shape, all we did was select a shape, pick our color, and then drag it out, right? And just for those simple steps, this is how many nodes is representing it. So we left click on a shape icon. We use the parallelogram, which is this shape right here. I forgot to show them in the drawing diagramming tool in Google Drive, the Draw IO. So I just use stuff straight from here. I could draw in a text object just to give it a name. You can drag in the rounded rectangle and use this little diamond to adjust the rounded shape. You can double click to type in it, and you can shorten it up and then align it with the name up there. And then here's my input, and I can write left click or whatever the action is and align that. And if you hover over, these arrows appear, and they allow you to show the flow of your states of your user flow diagram. So anyway, this is what you can use: rounded rectangle. We have our parallelogram. We have our regular rectangle, which is for processing, and we have our diamond shape. And what you do is you double click and you fill it out, and then if the action is too big, you can open up the size of the shape if the text within it's too big. I also know that if you hold down Control, you can enlarge or scale at the center point. And then you hover over shapes, you see that the arrows are appearing. Alright, so that's the basics of using the diagramming tool. But here we left click on the shape, then we have a rectangle to prompt the user to draw the oval, and then the user is left drag clicking input. We have a process happening that the oval is being interactively updated or drawn as we're left dragging. And then we have a decision here, like, are we still dragging? We're checking every time. If yes, we're still drawing that updated oval. If we're not drawing, or whatever the shape is, I should say. If we're not dragging anymore, meaning no, we draw the final shape, we display this manipulation gizmo, and we change the status to math icon. And then we can click on our shape. So this can even get more complicated, right? We actually have a choice. We can do the color or make the shape first, but I'm just trying to make a simple diagram of the process. And maybe in this case, the user, since it's just a sample user flow, they decide to draw first and then color. So left click on the outline color, change the outline color, left click on the fill, change it, and then we're done. So I would like you to try and draw a user flow for a section of your user experience with the paint tool to start to think as a UX designer and start to document your process, so that we can have you then go ahead and make your user flow diagram for your Sprint 1 project. Once you're done with that, if you come back and play my demo project, remember I'm right clicking on the project, and the project is, if you go back to Moodle, this demo project here, if you see that there's a painting user flow, a change primitive user flow, and a change color user flow, right? So now we can actually look at the diagram that, if you remember, I had posted up my example project. This is the user flow that I can now go over. So I have 3 of them, relatively simplified, and you will do something very similar. So this first project that you're going to be creating is, I'm going to teach you how to make this painting program. I'll teach you how to see where the mouse position is. I'll teach you how to spawn different types of 3D primitives, how to change colors, scale. There's a few different other attributes that we can mess around with at first. And so you're going to do something relatively simple. If you can think of a different activity besides painting, that's great. I'll also show you how to spawn multiple or different types of things with each click. They have different lifespans, but I would like you to try and use a project description to describe what you want to make at the end of the sprint. And once you describe it, you should be able to identify a few of the user flows of your sprint project that you need to define in a visual graph way, so that it'd be easy for you to build the user interfaces and build the features with the C# language. So for example, I have the painting flow, which is the main user flow. So we have a start point, we queue the user for input, we're going to give directions. I have to add that, use right click to draw and use left click to interact with the interface. So I have to add that on mine. But if they right click, we have input, and then we're going to create an object, we're going to randomize the size, we're going to randomize the color, and we're going to place the object where the mouse is at. Then if they're still clicking, which this should be a yes, oops, let me just delete that, pull in the yes over here, and let me move that over to There we go. This will be yes. Copy, paste that, move it down here. There's no. So if they're still clicking, still dragging, we're going to continue to create objects. When they're done, we stop. That was a painting flow, which they can do multiple times during one user experience session, but this is one little flow, one sample, one time that they hold down the right mouse click. Then you have to change the primitive, that user interface drop down up top. We have a start to our process. We cue the user. So we show the drop down, we give it a title, we let them know what it means. We left click, the list of choices will be presented, they drop down, and then the user clicks on which shape. So if they click the cube, we're going to change the paint object to a cube, sphere, change it to a sphere. If it's a cylinder, change it to a cylinder. Either way, that's the end of that process. You must enter the painting process, or the painting flow, to see your results. Change color, same thing. We have 3 user interface sliders, because we have the way that computer graphics works is you have red, green, blue as part of your color. So we cue the user for input, meaning we list these sliders they can use. They left drag, different than a click. But which slider are they dragging on, red, green, or blue? That's the different part of our color spectrum that will change. We change the red value, the green value, the blue value when we update during our painting flow. We just change that color value for now, and if you're still dragging, we still go through this process of changing color value. When you release the slider, we end this process. So if you go through and change multiple colors, you would go through this flow multiple times, or the user would in your app. We just have to represent it once. We can change red, we can change green, we go through the flow. Then they actually have to go through the painting flow to paint new objects to see the color change. So these are my 3 flows. So here's my sample project. My project description, my link, and my flow diagrams. And my link goes to my little demo. And that's what you will make if I pop back all the way down here. You will make all this stuff in these 3 weeks. Don't do it last minute. There's gonna be a failure point. So spread the project work out and post up your project here. And then next I'll create the online lecture. Thank you.